Welcome to the Bitcoin Aggregated podcast. We were supposed to have a guest today, but yeah, it looks like they haven't jumped in. I think there's a bit of difficulty with time zones between here and El Salvador, but that's all right. We'll see if we can catch up in the future, and we'll talk a bit about their project, which is pretty exciting, I think, as well. We've got a fair bit of stuff actually to cover in the news, which has been pretty cool. One in particular that I wanted to get into it with you, Chris, was the bulk card. But I'll bring up my screen. Hang on. Screen share.
This is the lightning payment card thing.
Yeah, I just got a snapshot of it. Like, oh, that's amazing. Like, if we could get a hold of one of them, I'd love to play around with it. Can you see that okay?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, this one here. So it's literally, the bold card. I haven't looked into it at all, but from the looks of it, like I've seen a few videos of people using it. It's literally NFC tap and go card. You load up with BTC and it's like lightning payments off the bat. Like you literally tap it and that's not a video. That's just a picture.
Gotcha. So I'm guessing the Android device just has some sort of wallet application that can generate lightning invoices, and then via NFC that card's able to just pay it.
I think so. Yeah. It seems, I mean, I need to do a bit of a
That's
dive
pretty
into
cool.
it, check it out. It's pretty awesome. Like that's next level. So that's like in people's minds, having a card that can pay, because most people are used to, tap and go with a card now. So they can have that. Like we kind of have it here with the, I don't know if you got the CoinJar card when that came out. Like it kind of does that, but it's not really. It's basically you have a NFC card that you can actually tie into your Android or Apple Wallet as well. But you're transferring BTC across. So you're essentially selling it to put it onto the card, and then you can tap, which is kind of cool. But this is like full on tap lightning to lightning from a card. So I reckon this could be a game changer if it takes off.
Yeah, I think that'll be really cool. Where were they using this? Do you remember?
I saw one in El Salvador. There was a video up on Reddit this morning. I saw, so it looks like it's sort of got doing the rounds, but
I reckon we'll see some more of that when we're in El Salvador later this year.
Yeah, 100%. On that note, they've got the two other big ones was Honduras and Rio de Janeiro, looking at moving forward with some sort of Bitcoin adoption. I think one,
this is news to me.
Yeah, one at a national level from the looks of it, and the other was like a hub. I haven't like really looked into them much. I thought you might have seen something on them, but it looks
literally
like
the first I heard about it.
Yeah, it looks like all the Spanish-speaking countries are jumping on board. It's pretty awesome. I wonder what that is. Like, why? I guess being El Salvador sort of kicking things off, they're like, it's kind of migrating like around those Latin-speaking countries or Spanish-speaking countries. But
wasn't it just like a month or two ago that a lot of these countries had representatives go to El Salvador, and they had like a big summit sort of thing, where President Bukele was essentially orange pilling all of these leaders of other countries. And I think a lot of the representation I think there's a few African countries there from memory, but a lot of Central and Latin American and South American countries. So I think they're all standing up and taking notice of what Bukele's done with El Salvador. And it's one of those cases where no one wants to be first, but certainly no one wants to be last. And so El Salvador has taken that first step. And now everyone's keenly watching from the sidelines, and they're slowly starting to work their way over the fence because, again, they don't want to be last. So, I think it's set a precedence, and it's got the ball rolling, and it's cool to see. I mean, that Honduras one sounds like the whole Bitcoin Valley, like they're taking like a Silicon Valley type model. Again, I haven't read it either, but perhaps that's just the gut feeling I have from the description, that they may be making a precinct where it's a bit of a tech hub kind of thing. But yeah, might have to actually catch up on the text a little bit later.
Yeah, but, it looks like there's a bit in there. But you know what's annoying about this? Like, we had this here. We're like the first place pretty much in the world, besides the one in New York that got shut down. But like
Talking about the blockchain center
the
or
Bitcoin Center, we had the
the Bitcoin
Melbourne
center,
Bitcoin
even before
Technology
that. Yeah.
Center. Yeah,
Yeah.
like we had it here, and there was just no support for it. It was such an amazing thing to have, and like it attracted people from all over the world to come to that space. And I know there was some sort of politicians and stuff through that were kind of just like there in name, I suppose, but there was no official support. And it's like, if there had been, we could have been like the tech hub for the world for BTC specifically. But I guess it's gone overseas, unfortunately. It's a sign of the times, I suppose.
Yeah, well, we're seeing a lot more Bitcoin conferences pop up in these countries too. Like
Yeah.
La BitConf is just after the El Salvador adopting BTC conference, I think like a few days after, or might even be at the exact same time. That one's in Argentina, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, cool.
I saw another tweet just this morning talking about a bunch of different Bitcoin conferences all around the world. And there was a bunch that were happening in South America as well. I think Brazil, there was one in India as well. So we're definitely
Awesome.
starting to see more of it, which is always good.
I did see something about Sri Lanka as well, looking at adopting. So like they've obviously been in the news lately with the basically collapse of their government and hyperinflation and all the rest of it. I saw briefly like there is talks of them sort of moving to the BTC network to sort of resolve that, which would be an exciting thing to see for that part of the world.
Well, they're at the point of just like, we'll try anything.
Yeah. Which I mean, and they can see an example working in these other countries. Like, why not, right? Like, it makes sense. I liked this tweet, and I thought you might have something to say about this one as well. And it's something that
I just saw it and I had a little bit of a cheeky smile. I'm glad you picked it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought this was good. So the tweet is a hashtag Bitcoin maximalist spend sats. So historically what you would hear is, you never spend, and it's basically you hodl. So it's you have your BTC, you put it away, and you can, like Michael Saylor, for example, borrows against it, rah, rah, rah. But I like this philosophy. So like you have it, you want to utilize it, right? But utilize it on the network to help other people, to onboard other people. And I think it's the right thing to do. But yeah, what's your take on that one?
Well, this is an interesting tweet. And there's been a lot of discussion over the last couple of weeks and maybe even a little bit longer about, the term Bitcoin maximalist. It very recently, over the last fortnight or so, it's, everyone's through Bitcoin Twitter and through a number of podcasts are having this discussion of trying to define what is a Bitcoin maximalist, because there is so many different definitions of what it is. Some of the things you touched on, someone who's just buys Bitcoin, hodls it, never going to get it out of your diamond hands. You got the toxic Bitcoin maxis that are, Bitcoin, everything else shitcoin. Like there's such a wide spectrum of what is considered a Bitcoin maximalist. And I do think this is one of the angles that often does get disregarded, the actual spending and the circulation of sats. And I have come more into this camp recently, I guess. Again, everyone sort of transitions through their Bitcoin journey, and they find different parts that they sort of attach to at different parts of their journey. But obviously, full disclosure with my work that I do with Bitrefill, we're trying to build the circular economy by giving people an opportunity and an outlet to actually use their sats for regular retail and digital purchases, whether that be gift cards or mobile phone top-ups, and even more recently, paying your bills. So
eBay cards that don't work.
Well, yeah, I think that might have been an eBay problem, but
for sure. Yeah.
Let's not get too deep into that. But yeah. I mean, if you look back at the white paper, which is, often the Bible, it was a peer-to-peer transaction,
digital cash,
based digital cash. Like I think Satoshi had the vision of it being used, literally transacted and moved across time and space, not just buy it on a centralized exchange and put it in a hardware wallet. Whilst, I promote doing things like that too, it is important to know that, it is a tool that can be used to transact in a decentralized fashion. And I think Bitcoin maximalists and plenty of others as well, but in the context of this person's tweet, I think they often sort of forget that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the element of they know that it's worth a hell of a lot more than what it is at the current time. So it is, part of that is like, I don't want to get rid of it because I know it's going to 1 million or it's going to 10 million or whatever your targets are. So, why would I buy a coffee? Why would I buy a gift card? Why would I do shopping or pay my bills with Bitcoin when that's the hard asset? So I get that, I get that. And I've got an element of that too. My personal kind of, the way I like to do it is, obviously I'm trying to acquire as much Bitcoin as possible in any fashion, whether that's purchasing it, whether that's mining it, whether that's earning it. I'm ticking all of those boxes. So I want my hands on as much as possible, just like the next maxi. But my general rule of thumb is, as long as I'm still the trajectory is up in terms of sats, like I don't look at it at the dollar value, and those that have listened to the podcast before know that I'm not looking at the Bitcoin price, and I haven't for the entirety of this year. I'm looking at the Satoshi price, so the Satoshi amount. So as long as my Satoshi amount is going up on a monthly basis, so whether I buy a gift card or I mine some Bitcoin or I buy some Bitcoin, like as long as at the end of the day that number is going up, whether if I have 1 Bitcoin today, next month I want 1.01. Whether I've bought, sold, done whatever the hell I've done, as long as that number is still going up, I'm generally happy. Obviously, it can go up faster if I don't buy anything or if I don't trade it or anything like that. But yeah, my general rule of thumb is, as long as I'm getting more Satoshis, I'm generally happy.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other aspect as well, like going back years ago, like when we got the donation to school to build a learning space from Andrew Kwan, his philosophy was like, look, what's the point in me having all these sats or this BTC if I can't spend it to do some good in the world, right? So that's why he kind of took it upon himself to go around to different schools, donating, if they wouldn't accept Bitcoin, donating hardware and utilizing it that way. And I think that's really nice. And it's had a big impact on a lot of people, students in particular. And yeah, if he had just been sitting at home hodling, none of that would have happened. So I think there's a lot of stories like that as well. So I think if we can sort of emulate that, I mean, we don't have to do it at that scale. 21 BTC is a very generous thing to do for a school, but I mean, even just microtransactions to people, onboarding someone new, giving them some sats. I think that's really, really important. So yeah, I agree with Walker here. I think it's a great tweet.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has different kind of things that they want to get out of Bitcoin, right? Like some people, like for instance, where we are, $1, for as fucked as it is, it more or less works. So I don't need Bitcoin to go down to the shop and buy groceries because I can tap my card and with pretty high certainty knowing that it's going to work. But in other parts of the world, some of the areas that we talked about previously where people are underbanked or unbanked, Bitcoin is used much more in a spend fashion as opposed to a hold and investment type fashion like it is in some of these more, I guess, Western countries. So yeah, it is different in different areas. But I think there's a bit of an obligation to continue to spend by the maxis to promote that aspect of the technology itself. I mean, yes, the hodl mentality is good, and I certainly abide by it. But we need to remind people that it does have more usability than just simply holding it. Like all the things that it claims to do better than gold. It's divisible, it's transportable, all those sort of things. Like prove it. Send it across the world in a matter of seconds with minimal fees.
Yeah,
that can be done.
Buy a T-shirt over Twitter from the other side of the world over the Lightning Network.
Yeah. I mean, imagine us trying to do that with a wire transfer.
Couldn't. Yeah,
it would take days.
No way to do any of that. It was such a cool thing to do. Wanted to bring up this tweet as well. I thought this was cool. And we've probably said this a million times that we're very early, but the fact, going back to your point earlier, just talking about the white paper and it being digital cash, I've seen a lot online, mostly on Twitter, I think, from people basically saying that there isn't enough Bitcoin to go. Like they don't have an understanding that there's enough BTC for everybody in the world, like going forward for, forever, basically. And I thought this was really pertinent and something that we should probably come back to a lot, that the fact that, one BTC is divisible down to enough decimal places so that it's been thought out that there's going to be enough for everybody well into the future, at least up until 2140. After that, I guess we don't know what's going to happen. But I think people see the price and they see, one Bitcoin is this, and they have no concept that it can be utilized. So this is something that I think we need to sort of keep in the back of our minds and disseminate to people as much as possible, like particularly onboarding new people.
Yeah, I agree. The amount of people that I've talked to and helped over the last sort of 5-6 years with hardware wallets and security and just general sort of novice topic related questions. The one that comes up often is, this is why people, I think, end up shitcoining early in their journey, is because they look at Bitcoin and go, well, I've missed that boat. It's worth 40,000, 20,000, whatever it is at that point in time. I can't afford one of those. So I'll go and get XRP because XRP is 30 cents and I can buy 10,000 of those. Right.
Yeah.
And if it goes to 20,000 like Bitcoin, I'm going to be super duper rich. We all know how terrible of a take that is. But when you don't know any different, those are the things that you think, like, I can't afford a whole Bitcoin. It's too expensive. And then you do have to have that conversation with them. It's actually divisible. It's kind of like $1. Like there's 100 cents that make $1.
Yeah.
It's same sort of concept, except it's 100 million and they're called Satoshis.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, we don't see that many decimal places with any other type of currency usually.
That's right.
So it is a bit of a mind thing, saying like 0.0001285 Satoshis or whatever.
Yeah.
Trying to conceptualize that as like value and like a number that makes sense, I think for most people is quite challenging. That's why we need to be thinking in sats, like it's the sats
100%.
standard, not the fiat standard. And I've been taking that shift of mind over the last sort of 12 months to now, where I look at Satoshis and like I understand the value, even if I don't know what that relates to in fiat terms, mostly because I don't care. But yeah.
No, it's so true. And I love, like, you're seeing more and more like the option in wallets for them to have like a sat standard rather than BTC or MBTC. And I think that's the way forward. 100%.
For sure. I mean, quick plug, I use Amber, which is a dollar cost averaging Bitcoin only app. And I think they default in sats. So you've actually got to change it.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, they're obviously very Bitcoin centric, Bitcoin only. And so like even the daily little notification when you stack is, oh, well done for turning your fiat into Satoshis. Like they even use that terminology, right? Like they don't say Bitcoin, they say sats. So they're doing their bit. And I think more of us need to do that kind of stuff to get people thinking along those same lines.
100%. I thought this was really interesting as well. I don't know if you've probably seen the feed, the fear greed index. Sorry, the price was there, but
that's okay.
Again,
I'm familiar with the index.
But I thought this was really fascinating. Seeing this kind of move back towards the center, I suppose. In the current climate, where you see all these other stocks sort of tanking, and it's kind of like what we were talking about last week. Like, do you reckon, with all these other tech stocks and Netflix, etc., tanking, could they be shifting across to BTC? And it kind of looks like that's what happened to a certain degree. Not saying that the prices reflected that necessarily, but the fear greed index, because it was like all the way fear a couple of weeks ago, seems to be coming back around, which I thought was really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this index a bunch of times. I don't actually know exactly what data points go into to make that sentiment, whether it's like trading data, I imagine, is part of it.
Has to be,
Perhaps
right?
there's some social element to it, perhaps as well. I'm not really sure what makes up that. But one thing I will note, I think it's the documenting Bitcoin Twitter. I think it is maybe the one that I saw it on, but I'm sure it's been shared elsewhere. But basically, it did like a side by side of this this fear greed index, and it had like when the price was like 10K or whatever, or 20K, 3 years ago versus 20K now, and they're just like completely opposite.
Exactly the opposite. Yeah.
Like one's fear, one's greed, and it's just like it's the exact same price,
Same
but
thing,
like it's
yeah.
funny how like depending on how you got to that price, if we've come down from 70K to 20,
Yeah.
people are obviously going to be fearful. But if we've gone from $2,000 to 20, everyone's like, oh my god, we're going to the moon. But realistically, we're at the exact same price. So when I look at that, I go, oh, just another reminder why I don't care about price and why my time preference is so low, because at the end of the day, none of these things matter as long as you've got that long-term outlook and you
100%.
believe
No, I'm
Bitcoin is going to
definitely
achieve that.
definitely on the same page with you there. I just thought this was fascinating when it popped up, just based on what we were talking about last week. I thought maybe there is a shift in mindsets, but
maybe we're all living in a little bit of denial, thinking like, oh, because like no one really thought we would retest the previous highs from 2017, and like from what I've been told, we have. And so, I think most people thought that was very unlikely to happen. So perhaps it feels like we've bottomed out, even though like the rest of the macro environment looks pretty abysmal. The things you alluded to, fiat currencies, stocks, shares, all those sort of things are getting absolutely hammered. Maybe Bitcoin is sync like, we've had our moment. I'm a little bit hesitant. Again, I'm not a trader, so these things don't matter to me.
It doesn't matter.
Obviously the sentiment's interesting to still think about. I'm not crazy, but I do feel like maybe we're a little bit hopeful, and maybe we'll get like another kind of, stab in the back to say, I don't know, this is the reality. The times are shit, but I mean, there's certainly been the narrative historically of Bitcoin being the hedge against inflation, against all of these types of things. So if it's ever going to do it, now would be the time for it to do it. So maybe there's an element of truth to that narrative. Maybe we're starting to see people go, okay, inflation seems to be setting record highs month on end. Where are we going? What are we doing? This Bitcoin thing's still around. Maybe it's a good place.
Yeah, it could be. It's interesting, and I think there's a lot of people probably getting into the space and learning about exchanges and all that sort of thing. It is interesting to see like how much the exchanges have shifted in terms of KYC and looking at transaction data as well. So I was working with a friend during the week to do a transaction. Basically, he wanted to get, I think he had a bunch of shit coins on Trade Ogre. I don't know if you've used Trade Ogre before, but the
Trade exchange.
It's great. It's zero KYC, and he was like, had it all in there. I was like, there's no guarantee that these guys will be around even tomorrow, so you probably want to get it into a hardware wallet, right? So help him consolidate that, and then his idea was to sort of move, 50% into hardware wallet, 50% into what was he using? CoinJar, so he could try and trade it or something. But basically, CoinJar looks at the IP address of Trade Ogre and blocks the transaction coming across. I was gobsmacked. So we sent through an email saying like, what's going on? And they came back and said,
when you send them the coins, it doesn't allow it, or
doesn't allow it. So it comes up,
wow.
You can see it, but it just says no, and we don't accept them from Trader. I was like, wow, this is next level.
If they give you a deposit address in CoinJar and you send a transaction, like they can't stop that. They're going to receive the coins, right?
Well, you can see it, but you can't utilize it. So
they just hold it ransom.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get it withdrawn back out?
He's still working on it, I think. So there's a whole bunch of stuff you have to do, like in terms of KYC, like bank details and all the rest of it. And it wasn't a lot of money either. I was just
wow, CoinJar's corrupted.
Yeah, completely. I was
oh
really
my god
blown away. It was It was really next level. It's like, geez, so they must have like their servers just looking at the IP addresses of the Trade Ogre servers and going, nah, anything that comes out of that node, not happening.
Oh God, I really hate when businesses, to go off on a little tangent here, but I hate when businesses take a stance and like try to be the arbitrators of what's right or wrong or the truth.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just it's none of your business. Like, if it comes from Trade Ogre, so be it. Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't automatically mean that, oh, it must be used for drug dealings, or it might, maybe
Yeah.
it's used for terrorist financing or something.
I'll tell you what he bought. It was like there was a fork of Monero called Wow Nero, which is like a
I've heard of
Doge
Wanero.
ripoff. So like something so stupid. I was just like, get rid of that. He lost money on it. I'm like, get rid of that, just put it into BTC and shift it across. So it wasn't like he's made massive gains and he has to report it. It was like all at a loss. And yeah, it's just stupid. I don't get it.
Yeah, I would be there's no way I can recommend CoinJar to people after hearing
Not
stuff like
now.
that. Not
No,
anymore.
no.
Back in the day, they were one of the guys, but
Yeah, they're amazing. Yeah, it's
I don't
just
think they are
um
anymore. I
no.
think that's, I mean, I think that's what's probably likely to happen here in Australia, at least, and perhaps other parts of the world, but I don't have as much insight. But I do think that the government, because at one point, and it may still even be the case, I don't know exactly, but at one point over the last sort of 2-3 years, like, we had over 250 what they call digital currency exchanges here in Australia. 250 just seems like such a lot. Like, I don't even know half of them. I could probably rattle off 20 or 30, and then I'd really have to start thinking about some of the other ones. A
Yeah.
lot of them are probably like fairly unknown and shit and scams and rug pulls and whatnot. But there's no need for 250 digital currency exchanges. And I think the government are realizing that that's probably the place that they can have the most amount of control when it comes to this.
Yep.
Like, obviously, there's no control whatsoever over peer to peer. But the touch points of centralized exchanges where there's KYC and there's accounts and there's IP address and there's all this data, like, that's their best bet in terms of trying to understand this, regulate this, control this, etc. And so when there's 250 of them, there's just too many participants. So what I think is going to happen is we're going to see a big tightening of kind of like the KYC and the AML regulations. We've had quite a bit of it already, but I think we'll have more. Some of the
Yep.
stuff you're talking about, where there's like
For sure.
bans and there's constant tracking. Like, companies like Chain Analysis have worked for decades with this sort of stuff with government contracts, so they're going to be very happy. But
Yep.
what will end up happening is it'll squeeze all of those smaller players. So we'll go from 250 to a more manageable amount. I'm sure they have an ideal number that they want to target, maybe like 10 or 15 or 20 exchanges in Australia that they have basically, an open back door into, that they can say, okay, X, Y, and Z did some weird things on their tax returns. Can you show us, we know they have an account with you guys. Can you show us all of their trading data and all of their withdrawals, their deposits? Then they start looking around at where they've sent money to and from. Oh, look,
Yeah.
turns out it's gone to Trade Ogre. Maybe they're mixing coins, or, who knows where they go down that rabbit hole. So I think that's what we're likely to see over the next few years here in Australia, and perhaps other parts of the world that are quite dictatorial,
Yeah.
where they'll want to control as much of that flow as they can. And when there's 250 exchanges, they just can't.
Can't do it. Yeah. Well, I hope it has the other effect, right? Like, so things like BISC and these peer-to-peer networks sort of jumping off more so in Australia. Like, you can jump on them now, and there's a few Australian transactions, but I'd like to see that.
Last time I went on BISC, there was nothing.
Nothing.
Literally nothing.
It's gone up a bit. Like, there's a
Okay.
bit more, but yeah, I'd like to see that become the standard. And it probably will, if they're going to make it that hard for people to do anything like on their own bloody wallet. Like, why would you bother? Why would you bother using them anymore? Like, it's just not a good user experience. I thought this one was interesting. I have been repeating that there's been 100% uptime forever. I had no
Really?
idea. Yeah. Did you know that it was 99.987% uptime?
I didn't know it was
Like,
exactly that. I knew it was a lot, but I knew it
yeah.
wasn't 100. I knew there was some downtime a long time ago, like back in the early days. I've forgotten the exact reasoning behind it, whether there was like a
Right.
bug or something or a vulnerability. it got patched pretty quickly. I'm pretty sure this was like when there was nobody on the network.
Right.
But I think that since then it's now like 3,500 days of complete uptime.
Yeah.
Since that moment. But yeah,
I mean, it's still incredible.
it's a rounding error. Like
it's a routing error. It is.
99.9875, and that's going to continue to go up, assuming there are no further downtimes. So they'll never be 100, but it's damn close.
Well, yeah, I need to stop saying 100%. But yeah, I think it's still amazing, right? Like, what an achievement to have a computer network that's never been hacked, never gone down. Like, it's really something to behold. And that's where you look at something like Ethereum, that's, or Solana, or any of these other blockchains that are constantly going down, having issues, like getting jammed up on the blockchain. Like, it's never happened to BTC, and it hopefully never will. I think the bigger the network gets, because it's like the inverse of like everything else, basically. Like, the bigger it gets, the stronger it gets, and the more robust it gets, and the more it scales. Everything else, any other sort of computer network that you build, it has the opposite. So like, the bigger it gets, the clunkier it gets, and the more insecure it gets. So it's fascinating to see. But yeah, I think it's really a testament to everybody. So like the miners, the node runners. Speaking of which, I've connected my node to Sparrow Wallet, Samurai today. It was quite a cool experience. So I'll run you through that, how to do it on yours, because it's definitely worth doing. So you can have direct to your phone, connected to your node, and I've got my miners set up to go directly to that. So I'm not using any third party now. So it's definitely
That's really cool.
If you're not running your own node, definitely get onto it. It's super important, I think. Lastly, I thought we'd just touch on this because I think it's pretty cool. So I guessed it was going to come. Actually, before we do that, Albi, someone called at KAAS Peeland _Peeland. Thank you for listening and and streaming with 20 sats a minute. That's pretty awesome. There's a bunch of other people too, but they're just all user, so randos. Is there somebody else?
This is just through the Fountain app, right? These are just users through Fountain.
No, so it could be any. So probably Fountain, but it could be Sphinx. It could be any of the Lightning enabled. What's the other one? There's another really good one.
So the podcast is being hosted on. You can reach it through those other ones as well, not just Fountain.
Yeah. So Sphinx.
Very cool.
There's a list of them. So if you go to Podcast Index, it's got them all listed. And yeah, this could be from any other. Tiggs as well. He's listening again. But yeah, thanks to everyone listening. That's really cool.
Big shout out.
Finally, just wanted to talk about this. So John from My Primo Bitcoin, which is based in El Salvador. Hopefully we can catch up with him before we head over there. They've basically been running a Bitcoin diploma, and they've had a bunch of students going through it. And I thought it was just such a cool thing to see, and to have like a full curriculum built out, that people are actually going through at like a high school or even higher ed level. And it's something that I want to replicate here in Australia. So recently I've started a course for higher ed, that basically runs me through how to create an accredited curriculum or accredited course in Australia. So what I want to do is pull out all the pieces from there's an accredited blockchain course, obviously cybersecurity and information technology and info security, pulling pieces out from that to create a new curriculum. But all the pieces around Bitcoin specifically just aren't there. So if you look up training.org.au, it lists like everything that you can possibly find as a course, and Bitcoin just isn't there. So I think
so you'll have to create that yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And how does that get accredited? Just by nature of you being the guy that creates it, or?
Well, that's it. So it has to get signed off on, and I don't know all the ins and outs of it. That's why I'm doing this course. So it's 6 months, and at the end of it, I'll have the skills to actually do that. So it's right. Pulling in qualifications from different areas and then writing the missing pieces for that. So for example, there's one guy who did the course previously. So he's, I think, wrote a curriculum on yoga instructors, which sounds crazy. But he's like accredited curriculum for people to go through that. So if he can do it for that, I'm sure I can do it for BTC and have it as something that people can go through. And I think it's like something that a lot of Australians would definitely resonate with and jump at the chance to do. There's just nothing out there, right? So I know a lot of people who have come to me and said, "Oh, look, I would have loved to have bought Bitcoin or used it or anything. There's nowhere for me to learn," and not many people willing to teach as well. So there's a lot of people, I suppose, kind of fearful to be, dealing with people's money and all that sort of thing, which I totally understand. So I think having an institute behind it would really help us get across the line. But the fact that these guys are doing it already, I'm super excited to hear more about it. But
El Salvador has a lot less red tape, so they can get it. They can just make these things happen a lot quicker than we do. We're going to jump through hoops just to get accreditation and all this nonsense. But I won't get hung up on that. But the one point I wanted to make about this particular Bitcoin diploma program, I think it's obviously really awesome, and it's a shame that John couldn't join us today. But we'll hopefully get him back next week or in the coming weeks to talk a bit more in depth about what he's been doing. Because I'd love to learn. I don't know a hell of a lot about it, but sort of the big takeaway I had, which is probably comes at no surprise, when I went to El Salvador last November, which was only about 2 or 3 months after they did the legal tender law and put it into legislation. I think that was September. Was that that nobody knew what Bitcoin was, which again shouldn't come at any surprise. And I think Bukele was getting a little bit of criticism by pushing this thing through that nobody kind of knew. And kind of my take was, I think they just had to do it. Like, what were they going to do? Spend 3 years building programs and educating the state and putting it into schooling systems to then bring in Bitcoin? Like, it's a lot easier. It's like the classic, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
And so, he just launched it, and he did a pretty damn good job at it, in my opinion. Obviously not perfect, but now there's a reason for these things to exist.
Yes.
There's an actual need for people to understand Bitcoin because it's there to stay. It appears, at least. Whereas if it was the other way around, it would be like, oh, why is this here when it's not even, I can't even use it, kind of thing. So I think this is probably the better way to do it. And that's probably leads credibility to the fact that we don't have much of that here in Australia, because Bitcoin's not legal tender. Nobody uses it. Nobody transacts with it. People just use it as an investment vehicle and speculate on it mostly. But if there was a genuine need for it, then, like it being legal tender, then these courses would be in there for sure.
100%. And learning about the technology as well, I think, is important. So instead of just a blockchain course, learning about like the intricate details of BTC as well. So there's a lot in there that isn't covered in the blockchain courses that are out there, or the accredited ones anyway. So I think that's going to be important. But yeah, I like your point. I think it's the fact that he did that and just did it kind of ham-fistedly, I suppose. But I like the fact that he just like rolled it out. It's a good analogy, I reckon, to like systems design for a school. So if you think of like most schools across Australia, they'll go down like one vendor route. So you'll have like principal makes a decision on, Mac or Windows, and then, or Chromebooks or whatever it is. And the whole school has to run on that because, this central authority sort of said that. So you could draw an analogy to that, to, fiat currencies and kind of, Visa, MasterCard, I've in every school I've been at, like pushed to have like open to any device, basically. So platform agnostic. So it means, students can bring in a Chromebook, a Raspberry Pi, like whatever. If it's got a browser, bring it in and use it. I'd always try and push people down the Linux path because I think that's really important to learn. But I think if a principle was to mandate something, I would say mandate Linux, like make the kids choose a Linux distro and learn that inside out, like the benevolent dictator. Like it's a means to an end, right? So he's kind of done that with an open source money, and said, look, I know this is probably tough to begin with, but in the end, it's going to be a lot better for you. You just can't sort of see it yet. So I think, yeah, it'll be interesting to see, but I could 100%, if you see any students that have learned how to use Linux from a young age and terminal and command line interfaces and have an understanding of Linux distros and how to install them, how to use them, how to build with them, they're like at the beginning, it's very hard, but they're leaps and bounds above everybody else. So I think that's going to be the same for the people in these countries that we're probably angry about it to begin with, it's probably and confused, like what the hell, what's going on? But it's going to be much better for them in the long run.
I would agree.
Oh shit! All right, well, we'll leave it there, and yeah, we'll catch up again next week, and hopefully have a guest, which would be pretty cool.
Hopefully, yeah.
Anything else you wanted to talk about, Chris?
No, I think we had a good chat today. I guess I would just say if people want to continue the discussion or pull us up on anything that we might have misrepresented, reach out to us on Twitter. I'm at Lungdoge, LUNGDOGE. We've got Bitcoin Aggregated as well. Is that BTC Aggregated?
Yep. And bitcoinaggregated.com has all the deets on there. And I'm Kieran D. Nolan at Kieran D. Nolan on Twitter. So yeah, reach out. Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, Kieran. Thanks for your time. Thanks everyone for listening.
Cheers. Bye.